Hey, it's Jeremy from Jeremy.net. I am a comic book artist, writer, creator, self-publisher, and I share my creative process here with you online. If you enjoy these live streams, would like to get additional bonus live streams twice a month where we do deep dives into some of the best art books around, um, you can become a Patreon subscriber for as little as $2 a month. It also gets you access to an online archive where you can read all of my comic books and access to a Patreon exclusive Discord server where we share art talk, tips, feedback, process, work in progress, and more. So if that all sounds good to you, for as little as $2 a month, you can get on. There's additional rewards at higher tiers. But head over to patreon.com/Jeremy. That's patreon.com/GERIMI. If you'd like to get a free digital sketchbook, work in progress animated gifts delivered right to your inbox, blog posts about what I'm reading, what I'm watching, what's inspiring me, you can sign up for my free monthly newsletter at newsletter.jeremy.net. And if you'd like to purchase physical copies of my comic books, or if you read digitally on Kindle, you can go to amazon.jeremy.net. That'll forward you to my Amazon author page. You can pick up books like my first graphic novel, Eye of the Gods. It is a psychological thriller about a man cursed with visions he cannot control. You can also pick up my most recent project, Morning Star. It tells the story of Lucifer's fall from heaven as a Western. It's an 8-issue series. Volume 1 contains issues 1 through 4. Volume 2 contains issues 5 through 8. Both volumes have extensive back matter, script excerpts, character designs, thumbnails, page layouts, photo reference, and more. I basically show you how I put the entire book together. And there are book flip-throughs for both volumes on the homepage of my YouTube channel. There's links for all these in the description for the videos, and if you're watching on Twitch, should be links on the About tab of the channel. Okay, so today, let's get started. And I wanted to try something a little bit different. Something, talking with other people on the Patreon Discord server about story and animation. I don't really have a reason for wanting to do this. It's just an experiment that I want to try to see how it works out. So what we're going to be doing today is something that I am calling a motion study. Now, who knows? People that are full-time animators might have a more official name for it, but I'm just calling them motion studies. And what I'm doing here is I'm taking a scene from the amazing movie Everything Everywhere All at Once. And what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be doing stick figure drawings of a 1-minute section of the movie. See, Thomas in chat says, sounds like a fun stream. Well, I hope it's fun for you guys. I hope it's fun for me too. Let's see how it goes. So the idea here is I didn't try to capture key poses, meaning like characters at extremes, like right before an action or at the end of an action. I just went through second by second and captured 60 still frames from a fight scene in Everything Everywhere All at Once. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw basically stick figures of those scenes, of those still movie frames. And I'm probably going to, in order to make them read a little bit better in the drawing, I might change them because some of these poses might be like right in midstream, where instead of getting someone throwing a punch and landing or cocking back in the punch, they might be sort of in mid-movement. So I might move it one way or the other to not necessarily match the film still exactly, but just to make it read more in the drawing. And then at the end, I'm going to just run them through in Procreate's Animation Assist and just see how it plays. So we're starting here. This is a sequence where Evelyn has been captured by the police, and then the sort of cosmic superpowered version of her daughter, Jobu, has arrived, and you're not quite sure whether she's there. She seems like she's there to save her mother, but, there's a lot in this movie to unpack. If you guys have not seen Everything Everywhere All at Once, I believe it's up for Best Picture. I think it should win. I think it's amazing. There's a lot in this movie. It has a lot of heart, but yet more creativity I've seen in any movie in the past decade. And that is one of the reasons why I chose to draw it. So I'm going to start here with, and I have to remember to draw each frame on a separate layer because that's how the animation assist works. Is that each layer is like a frame, and then when you set to play, like you just go through the frames. I mean through the layers. So let's start with Evelyn. And I'm going to keep them just sort of like stick figures. So this isn't going to be like me doing super detailed studies because I also do enjoy doing film studies, just frame studies where I'm just looking at a film and drawing a frame to get the color, the tone, the composition. This is more about motion. And I really, part of this experiment is I want to see if I can actually capture that sense of motion in just a stick figure. Now, true, I'm drawing her with hair, so these aren't really stick figures. They're more like box figures, where I'm just drawing the basic details. You know, maybe enough to indicate expression. Let's see here. Tyler mentions, I've been living up to my nickname, Harmless Horrors, lately. I've been drawing and posting phobias as demons, as well as publishing chapters of my original horror novel online. That sounds like a great exercise. Um, I know for myself, I frequently will draw, whenever I'm going through some emotional stuff, I will do drawings that maybe not necessarily trying to draw them as demons, but I will do drawings that are sort of attempting to capture whatever emotional thing I'm going through. So I think, art as a healing or therapeutic tool, those of us who do a lot of art already know this, but I don't think it can be undersold how powerful art can be as a therapeutic tool. So right now, what I'm really trying to do is just sort of measure in the frame where all the heads are in position to each other, in relation to each other. Like the cop with all the piercings, he looks like he is probably a little bit taller than Evelyn, but not by a lot. However, he's further back in space, so their heads seem, you know. Actually, who knows? Maybe he's about her height, and maybe she's just really tall because it does look like, yes, he's slightly lower than her because he's farther back, but he doesn't seem like he's that farther back. Like he almost seems like he's about to be parallel to her. When I say parallel to her, I mean if they were standing right next to each other, his head would line up with her head in terms of the height. Hang on, I also want to switch the eraser that I'm using. I was doing some drawing where I needed a more of a figure drawing brush earlier. Let's see here. Tyler says that's what the novel is. It's about a man dealing with survivor syndrome and with a monster that represents it. I lost my dad in a 2020 bike car collision, and the book has been very therapeutic. Well, I'm sorry to hear that. I'm sorry for your loss, but I am glad that the art that you're doing has been helping you process that. He says it's also been a fun project. Um, you know, it's that's some heavy stuff, but I'm glad that you're using it to do something that is just helpful for you, but also is something that's very creative. So, all right, I'm getting too caught up in the drawing. All right, next frame. Because in my head, I originally thought I was going to be able to knock out one of these per second. Like, not per second, but like draw each one of these in 1 minute so that at the end of an hour, I'd have, the minute long clip. So I'm exaggerating the tilt of her head a little bit, sort of the what the hell? Yeah, this guy I think is definitely shorter than Michelle Yeoh because he's like now passing her, and height wise, he's still below her head. But also, I think it's odd that his arms seem like they're almost in the exact same position. So I'm going to move one arm forward because it does seem weird to me. And I love how the composition is keeping her like right in the center of that like the lines of the ceiling are all pointing towards Evelyn, the perspective lines. But hell, that's what filmmakers do. It's good composition. It's kind of the job, but it still looks really cool. Now we've got close up two shot of Jobu. Actually, let me make her hair wavy so it at least feels like her. I like how she's trying to give him little puppy dog eyes while she's about to turn him into confetti. Next frame. Move this up here. Why does it keep doing that? Just want to make sure it's not drawing on a frame it's not supposed to be. All right. Um, I will tell you that for this exercise, it is extremely helpful to start with the heads, which is kind of the opposite. Normally, when I'm drawing figures, I try to figure out the full figure and then draw the details. But starting with the head as a box or circle and just say, this is how much real estate it takes up in the frame. Like, does the head take up, is it placed near the center of the frame? Is it like a sliver of the frame? Is it a quarter of a frame high? Like looking at Joy's head, her head takes up the lower half of the frame and it's about as wide as maybe bigger than a quarter, not quite a third of a frame. Let's see here. Tyler says, one of my favorite movies to draw is Into the Spider-Verse. It has so many awesome shots to redraw. Yes, very, very true. You know, I actually have not gone back and rewatched it since it first came out. And that is not in any way kind of a diss on the movie. It's just there's this endless flood of film and TV and story to watch. And I just have not had time, even though it's been on my list of things. I loved it when it came out. I just have not had time to go back and rewatch it. But no, that's a great one to do film studies from. Yeah, doing this is a lot more shape oriented versus volume oriented the way I normally draw. And the details aren't necessarily important in terms of drawing his badge and the mic on his the walkie-talkie on his shoulder, but they're things that even though I've already watched this sequence a couple of times to capture all the frames, I'm thinking to myself, there may be a shot where it would be confusing or hard to tell who's who. And just having those physical elements on there will help it say, oh, this is that character because that character has a walkie-talkie on his shoulder. And these background elements are really not important. I'm just putting them there because again, I might need in later shots to have a better sense. And also it's just good practice for me. Like I'm seeing that they're not all heading towards the same horizon line. And I'm like, oh, well, I need to fix that. Or the same vanishing point, rather. All right. Is that? Let's go another frame. Let's see here. Tyler says, drawing the heads first is a smart idea. Well, I mean, normally when I draw the whole figure. What I try to do is draw as much of the figure as is in the frame. So for instance, I'm going, let me see here. For instance, in this next shot that I'm doing here, where it's going to be Evelyn and the three cops again, instead of drawing the head first, what I would normally do is just draw a box representing Evelyn, and that's all Evelyn. And then I would draw a box representing the cop on the right, and that's all him. And then a box representing the second cop, who looked like he was running forward, and now I realize he's just standing there shuffling from one side to the other because I drew him like he was moving forward, but he's really not moving forward. He's just they're all just sort of standing there, and he's just got his shoulders kind of like he's got his arms sort of up, like he's ready to jump in, but he's not quite jumping yet. So that's something that I kind of realized I did not get correctly. But the point is that normally I just draw a box for all of the elements, and then I work in the details of who is where. The reason why I was drawing the faces first is well, the way I normally draw it helps me keep everything in proportion. But when we're talking about filmmaking, the eye is really going to just be paying attention to the faces, and everything else is filling out around it. So for me, instead of drawing the figure the way I normally do when I'm doing figure drawing, and then from here break the figure down into where's the head, where's the chest, where are the arms. Instead of doing that, what I'm doing is I'm starting with a field that has some areas of focus. And those areas of focus are cop left, Evelyn center frame, looking up, about the same height, and then cop right, all of them looking up, cop right, head significantly higher. And this is more about understanding how these areas of focus are relating to each other. So I don't want to tell you that drawing heads first, like, oh, that's a good idea, because generally I absolutely do not, when I'm just doing figure drawing, or even when I'm working on comics, I usually save the head for last. And the reason for that is because if you draw a head that you like, it's so hard to get drawings looking good that if the body is messed up, you will fight tooth and nail to keep that good head drawing. When really what you needed to do is take that good head drawing and tilt it like so that their head is more cocked at an angle, or maybe you need to tilt it back, or just there's something about the head where it's not lining up with the body, and you're doing all of this stuff to try and fix the body when really what you need to do is redraw the head. Um, and so I try to get the body working first, generally speaking. And then if I need to spend forever just working on the head, I'm going to spend a long time working on the head anyway. So I'll just save that for when it's time. This cop is steady holding her arm, not letting her go. And they're all looking up because the lights went out. Or rather, the lights are flashing. So I'm going to just brush a little bit larger. Just to give that sense of light and dark. Everybody in this frame is like, what the hell is going on? In fact, this would be a nice frame to do an actual frame study where I wasn't drawing for story, but drawing just to capture just lights and darks because of the fact that the character's kind of disappearing into the shadows here. Particularly the cop, his uniform just disappears against that tone. The cop on the right. But they're all like, what is going on? All right, next frame. And what's nice here is we kind of go back to Joy again. Go back to her palming the dude's face. So really the only real change between this and the previous shot of her and the putting her hand on the cop's face is that now this frame is in darkness because it's really like they're just picking up right where this left off, where the previous one left off. So I think I will do the same thing again where I'll go really large brush and just try to block in some darkness here. And ordinarily this is something that I would not do for a motion study. The reason why is because the lights flickering on and off is part of the story. In fact, I'm gonna kind of merge his uniform with the light and dark. And that'll make a nice contrast when you go to the next panel where the lights seem to come back on again. Bring the brush size back down. And mind you, I'm just sketching this just to see how the story feels. If these were actual storyboards, then yeah, I would probably put arrows in. For instance, when Joy removes her hand from the officer's face, I would probably put an arrow on there. And I was actually trying to decide in doing these studies whether I would bother with that or not. Let's see here. Tyler says, gotta go. I'm exhausted. Go get some rest, man. Hope you have a good rest of your weekend. Let's see here. There's little things that sometimes, instead of drawing it exactly the way you do it, putting her hand a little further out so you can tell that she's releasing. And you know what? Maybe it does need a little arrow to kind of indicate that she's releasing him. Then next frame. Next frame, he has a severe reaction. Hey, Piggy, doing my live stream. What? Khaleesi is at my table. I guess she wants to see what I'm drawing. He's kind of puffed out like a chipmunk. He's like, what's going on? Did not sign up for this. Next frame. I'm trying to get that sense of his shoulders kind of coming up and forward, like he's heaving these this blast of confetti out of his body. It's almost like a dolphin jumping up out of the air. Pardon me. I want to take a moment to blow my nose. enough that we can see a little bit of a profile of Joy. She kind of steps aside while he is heaving forward. Before he was really, really big in the frame, and now he's coming down and withdrawing in. I don't think I even really need to draw his face in this because his face is in shadow. But what is interesting is I hadn't noticed that before. The second officer has now moved into frame, or maybe he was always directly behind the first officer and we couldn't really even see him. But the one with the piercings, he's in the distance. And honestly, that's something that I like to do in comic books is I'll try to throw something in the background that's going to be coming up next to kind of help with visual geography for the reader. Just say, all right, this is here. Next is going to be this other thing. Next is going to be this other thing. Joy looking very nonchalant, like, oh, whatever. Wow. Confetti. Now he's getting ready to rise up again. He knows that something is not good. He's thinking, what? Am I going to spit up more confetti? Nah, that would have been nice. Not this time, though, bro. It's going to be worse. And at this point, he just explodes. And this is one of those where I think I'm going to take some creative license with the frame and just puff him up like he's about to pop. Let's see here. 47 is in the chat. Says, hey, how's it going? Going very well. I'm doing a motion study from Everything Everywhere All at Once. I just took an experiment where I captured a bunch of still frames from a fight scene, and I'm just doing one drawing for each second of the frame just to, study the movement in the scene, because it you know I figure it's a great way just to study movement, whether you're doing comics or storyboarding or whatever. And also just because I love that movie and I need to go back and rewatch it again. And he says, glad to see we're going to be at WonderCon. And yes, yeah, it'll be great to see you in person. It's been too long. It'll be my first show in years, and it'll be nice to get back there and catch up and be able to just hit the convention circuit again. Although honestly, this is I think the only show that I have on the books for this year. Oh, hang on just a sec. I meant to make an announcement at the top of the live stream. Table E23. I'll put that on the screen at the end. I'll put in the description of the at the end of the video. But if you're gonna be at WonderCon in Anaheim in March, I will be in Artist Alley, table E23. Let's see here. Make this a little bit more bloated. He's still got a little bit of confetti stuck to his mouth, his face, side of his head. And he is not in the position, or I'm not drawing him in the position that he's in the frame. I'm just drawing something that feels like a guy about to explode with confetti. See here, next frame. The next frame is just her, an explosion of confetti. She has that sort of condescending, too bad. Let's put a little pop. Confetti all over the place. Next frame is now both now see, this is weird because you cut back now to, and I wasn't going into this looking for continuity errors, but now you cut back and you see, when you cut back to Evelyn, and the two officers she's standing between, Evelyn should be in the shot. When you look at the shot of Joy just looking at the confetti in the air, and you see the officer is reaching for a weapon, but meanwhile you cut back to the three shot, and the cop is standing like right next to Evelyn and the other officer, whereas he seems to be standing kind of by himself when he's in the background. In the previous shot. And now Evelyn's sort of like, what? I think they're all sort of like, what? Like the academy does not train us for getting turned into confetti. Let's see here. And 47, it says, I feel like this cut is more the doing of an editor than, say, the storyboard artist. Yeah, that's very true. I mean, obviously, there's lots of times when they don't expect anyone to be going through this scene by scene, frame by frame. And how this was staged may not be, how they stage shots may not always be how things cut together. When cut together for, that's, for people who don't do storyboarding or work in film, that's, cutting together is what they're actually, when they're editing the film together, they've got the multiple takes, the take that gives you the best reaction shot of Evelyn and the police officers may not perfectly line up with that distance shot of the special effect of the officer turning into confetti. So just because that other officer is there in the background, but he's someplace else when you cut back to the other shot, it's like, hey, they used whatever shot communicated both scenes the best. And if I weren't doing this drawing exercise, I would never have noticed. So it's certainly not something to, you know, care about. That's one of those things. It's just the nature of filmmaking. You're taking whatever tells the best story. Because for the most part, if you're nitpicking on this kind of thing, you're not watching the movie. You're not paying attention to what's happening in the story anyway. So, you know, it does not in any way diminish how amazing this movie is to me. Let's see here. That's another thing. Like I mentioned that ordinarily I wouldn't draw the details on their uniform for moving this quickly, for trying to move quickly. But the fact that like one officer, you've got two officers that are wearing black, and you've got the officer in the white shirt with the black tie. So not only does he have piercings, but he also has that black tie. These are things that make it easier to call out which officer is which without drawing too much. And again, going back to that beautiful converging lines all pointing towards Evelyn. I don't really need to put in those lights in the roof. That's just me wanting to, I don't know, show some perspective, but completely unnecessary. All right. Yeah, 47 is says, yeah, I feel like this cut is more doing with the editor than say the storyboard artist. Like they were tasked with making the scene pacing more punchy. And he says, yeah, the same with comics. The audience is too absorbed to notice. Hopefully, you know, it's funny. Part of me wanting to do these exercises is also trying to train myself to get down to the essence, much in the way that the storyboard artists do, because the amount of time, I mean, we know that the audience that is actually reading a comic, we know they're not spending a lot of time with the particular comic drawings. When you think about the fact of like how many hours it takes to draw a comic page, and that for the most part, that page will be consumed in under a minute. What it really does is it tells me I need to learn how to, like, if I get my drawing time down to I'm spending 1 hour for every minute someone is supposed to look at a page, that seems like a lot more of putting the appropriate amount of time into something in terms of like in relation to the attention that it's getting. And at this point, you know, I mean, it could be the fact that like when you see the other officer getting ready to pull his weapon, but notice now how things have changed. The camera has pushed in on Evelyn more, and now it's actually not the cop on the left, it's the cop on the right who is rushing forward into frame. He's let go of Evelyn's arm, and now he is jumping into action there after seeing what this girl has done to his fellow officer. It's like this whole posse, all of these are just like, what the hell? Let's see here. Now you've got her standing there. And there's another guy who came up out of nowhere and has a gun to the back of her head. So you get this really cool defiant. And this was one where I did intentionally stop the frame where I did it because I thought that this shot with the confetti kind of flickering down in front of her, particularly having that little piece of confetti over her eyes, I just thought that looked super cool. In fact, if I were going to do some everything everywhere all at once fan art, I think that this would probably be the shot that I would use. This exact shot of her having confetti over her eyes while she's standing in this hailstorm of like the remnants of the previous cop. She's ready to get down. Let's see here. 47 says, doing at least a little more fan art for WonderCon myself. Yeah, you know, it's funny. I've never had a thing against fan art. It's just that I'm usually so busy drawing my own things that I don't make time for it. And I don't know if I will actually even have time to draw any before the show because we're getting close to the dates already. I'm like I reordered some prints and I'm packing those. So all sorts of little things that I'm getting ready to do. You know, just all the getting your prints ready, checking if you need new signage, all those little adjustments you make before a show. I'm getting ready to do all that stuff, and I'm like, between that and work, I'm like, how much time do I really have to prep, or how much time do I have to draw pieces of fan art before the show? All right, that's enough for this frame. The only reason why I'm drawing as much as I am is because it's such a cool shot, and I want to keep drawing more of it. But I need to move on to the next frame. All right. Because we're already at about an hour here, and I've only done like 17 frames. So I don't think I'm definitely not going to get to the full 60 that I had intended. I think what I will do is probably, pardon me, we'll go extra long here for another half hour, and hopefully I'll get 30 seconds worth of this scene. And when I'm done, I will play it back and see how it plays. And now we go to this wider shot where we've got Evelyn now still pretty much center frame pleading for the officers not to kill her daughter. hands handcuffed together. Now, I will tell you that being very self-critical here, it displeases me that I'm not really selling this gesture. If this was something that I was doing for like professional work, I would sit here and I would work, even though it's just a stick figure, I would work until I really got the pleating down. Because her pleating while handcuffed, that's the even though the cops are in the foreground and they're pointing their weapons, the emotional core of this scene is a mother in the background pleading for her child's life. Not knowing that Joy has got this. um, but in her mind, she's like, they are about to shoot my child. And that's a really powerful emotional moment. Now, the thing that I was saying to Tyler before about starting with the heads and working around them, I think that really only works when you're doing a two shot or kind of like a medium shot or a close up. Now that we're dealing with not full figure, but you know, larger figures, I realized, oh, the part of the reason why this drawing is looking so wonky is because I didn't start with the torso first. So that thing about placing the heads, that's only on close up shots. You know what? I know that the point of this is not to waste time trying to be a perfectionist, but it bugs me that this shot is not as close as it should be. If I want this to feel like what I'm looking at, it should be more like this. And again, these are things that I don't consider them cheats because you use whatever tools you need to get a particular project done. But I did want to try and do this all with just me drawing as opposed to adjusting, editing, photoshopping, you know, what I just did. Grabbing the lasso, taking something that's too small and making it larger. My original goal was to try and draw all these also as an exercise to work in proportion. In the same way that I was drawing perspective and drawing parts of the room that I didn't necessarily need to draw for story, but just saying, all right, this is a good exercise to help me improve perspective. This whole thing is a great exercise for pretty much every stage of drawing because this forces you to work on perspective. It forces you to work on distilling the figure down to the essentials. It forces you to work on, did I say perspective? Perspective, proportion, distilling down to essentials, expression, gesture. Pardon me, I blow my nose again. in a scene where lighting is important, this is a good exercise for working on lighting. All of these things you're forced to pay attention to when you're doing little studies like these. Or, for instance, just the fact of the officer drawing with the hands, you know, one hand holding the gun and then another hand underneath cradling it to aim. Drawing that, but drawing it very simply. I just drew a mass of circles kind of, you know, over each other. I didn't actually draw what the a true simplified version of that actual drawing posture, or that what the hands look like doing that. That's another thing. It helps you have to figure out how to simplify your anatomy. All of these things I didn't think about when I came into this exercise. I was just thinking about motion. That's why I called it a motion study. Because a frame study would just be, I'm just trying to copy the frame and I'm working on, you know, really it's more about light and dark and composition. Whereas with this, I'll show you when I go playing through at the end. Me trying to get the characters and just how they move from second to second. Yeah, 47 it says, yeah, it helped to have a tight shot on the gun or the despair. And that's the other thing. I mean, who knows? The storytelling could have really, really pushed these things with the actual storyboard artist for this film may have pushed this even more dynamically, like incredibly dynamic. And in the filming, it might be the film that wasn't quite able to capture the dynamics of the storyboard, actual, storyboard artist. But this isn't necessarily me trying to reverse engineer the storyboard so much as try to improve my own visual storytelling. I mean, yes, in a way it is kind of reverse engineering the storyboards, but I know that, what's in the boards and what ends up on screen, a lot of times it's more depending on the type of film, the boards are just suggestions of they're framing the shot and the composition, but in terms of capturing all of the beats that I'm talking about, it might be that, they might be the loosest. That's why originally I said it was going to be just stick figures. And obviously I'm putting more attention here than in stick figures, but what's really interesting is for an action scene, a lot of close-ups in this. And her eyes should be more nonchalant here. And see, that's another thing, is spending all that time. Like, I really did think it was going to be just stick figure, stick figure, stick figure, stick figure. But I'm spending so much time here trying to get the facial expressions. But that's because having watched the movie, I know how emotionally charged every fight scene in this movie is, which I think is another reason why I love it. And that's another reason why there's a lot of close-ups, more close-ups than there are in usual fight scenes. Because most fight scenes, it's about the choreography and the action, but every single thing that happens in this movie, every physical action, every fight scene has an emotional consequence to it, or it is a representation of the inner world of this film. And that should be the case in most movies, And I think most movies do strive for that, but sometimes an action scene is just an action scene. Whereas in this movie, they show action films at their best, where every punch, every twist, every reaction is telling part of the internal emotional story. And the mustache on this officer is very important because he goes through a transformation in the next shot. Still little bits of glitter in the air. Spent a long time on that frame. Move this up here. Now, when you've got a shot this close, I go back again to the head and how does it relate to the heads of other figures in the scene? How does it relate to the head and the hand in this scene? And I love the fact that she has a look on her face that almost looks concerned. Almost. Let's see here. See HJ Mars in the chat says, "I love Everything Everywhere." He says, "My second favorite movie." Well, what's your first favorite movie? This movie definitely made it into my top five. Um, I have a hard time saying what my favorite movie is anymore because now there's just so well. Part of it's also that I haven't seen enough classic movies. Like I've definitely seen old movies like Citizen Kane and you know more contemporary classics like The Godfather, but I haven't gone through like film, like cinema history and really looked at some older classic movies. So I feel like my top five is kind of an uninformed top five, but for me it's stuff like Fight Club and Inception, Pulp Fiction, so definitely more actiony films, but this movie has burst into that list. I love the faux concern that Jobu has, like, uh-oh, I'm in trouble. I've gone too far. And it bugs me. It's stupid. I should not be doing this, but it bugs me that the mouth, I'm not getting the lips right, like anatomically in terms of where they would fall on the face. It's driving me nuts. Meanwhile, got the officer here, gun hand. That mustache, I went a little bit too big with it. I started doing an exercise this past week where I was drawing 1 minute heads. And I was using a website called Line of Action, which I will not shut up about because it's an amazing website. And I actually signed up for their paid tier, which is only, I think, like $2 a month. But it's a site that just provides photo reference, and it'll automatically create timed drawing sessions for you for however long you want. You can either do like 30-second, 60-second, 2 minute, 5 minute, 25 minute, or it just has a button where you can just hit custom and then just set it for however long you want to draw for. But my point is, I chose to draw heads 60 seconds each to really try and get down to the essentials. And I was having a lot of trouble getting just the basic blocking fundamental parts of the head down in such a short period of time. And I thought, well, that's how you get better at things, by doing the thing that's hard. Now, this is more of how I usually draw, where I'm drawing all of the elements of the body first. And it's almost like I'm building a trap for the head. And what I mean by that is that by the time I get to blocking in just the basic position of the head, I've already like worked out the position and the proportion of the rest of the figure to the degree that the head can only fit in one spot and can only be so big, so that I'm not struggling as much to get the proportion right because I've already fit in everything else. So it's like, oh, okay, the head has to go here. Um, it's like I'm trying to idiot proof my drawings. I'm trying to make it so that all the places where you would normally struggle and fight and try to get things right with the drawing, it's sort of like, oh, well, there's nothing to fight. It's that's where it goes, and that's how big it is. Even with this, I still her head is probably a little bit higher than I need it to be. But it's also that thing of like going back and forth between the shape of the head, including the hair, versus the shape of the skull. And I also realize I'm getting too lost in drawing stuff and not enough in just doing the story, the getting it down in simple lines, because I can already tell you that this one has way too many lines. And when I play it back, this frame is going to look horrible because it's just going to be, it's not going to read in an instant. Like when I play this back at, 1 frame per second with the animation assist, there's going to be too many lines. Instead of it just being all of the major shapes, it's just going to look like a bunch of scribbles up on the screen. And part of this exercise is also getting the drawing down so simply that it's just a few lines. In fact, I should make the brush a little bit larger. The frame study part of my brain wants to make each part of the drawing look good. But the part of me that's saying this exercise is about studying motion says, who cares if the individual drawings are good? Get the major shapes to read. And right now, with this drawing, this particular one on the screen, the major shapes don't read well. I could go back and fix it, but like I said, I want to get through at least to like 30 frames. Let's see here. HJ Mar says my top 4 is The Batman. I presume you're talking about the Pattinson one. Everything Everywhere, The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, Schindler's List, and my 5th is Almost Always Different Every Time. I have not seen The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent. I've heard good things about it. Schindler's List is definitely fantastic. I would say that one of my other favorites, which has a very similar feel to Everything Everywhere All at Once, is Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind with Jim Carrey, where they're erasing memories. That movie definitely is in my top 5. But I would say that my top 5, the order changes, the importance changes. I haven't really revisited it in a long time because I don't know. I got other shit to do besides sit around ranking movies that I like. I don't say that to disparage you ranking them. I'm saying that in terms of I have too many. I'm overloaded with things to do, and I don't have the time to do one of the simple joys of life, which is to rank movies in terms of order of enjoyment. Because I think that is a very human thing to do, and it's something that I would like to do, and I just have not done. So let's see. We had the one with her putting her hands behind her head, and now we go to her. What frame am I on? Her pulling. Now we do a reverse shot, and we go now to her pulling her hair apart from behind and revealing that she has now transformed her face to flip it. So now her face is coming out of the back of her head. And notice how the tip of the gun, this is great film composition right there. The tip of the gun is in the center of the frame. That's awesome. That, my friends, is filmmaking. This is more of a foreshortened shot. I'm drawing too much of the length of the gun. It's more foreshortened. Let's push that head back a little bit. So I'm trying to get back to what I was saying before, where I'm trying to say, all right, what are the major shapes that I'm drawing? Let's see here. Oh, HJ Mars also says, "What's your opinion of Mike Mignola's art?" That's a real easy question. It's amazing. It's phenomenal. I mean, who doesn't like Mignola? I mean, I'm sure that there are people out there who do dislike his work, but I mean, I haven't come across any, at least not in like modern times. Like I know that there were some people who maybe didn't like him in the late 80s, early 90s, but I can't fathom not loving his work. Like I thought it was awesome when he did Cosmic Odyssey. I thought his work was amazing back when he was drawing. There was a series that Howard Chaykin wrote and and Mignola drew called Iron Wolf for DC Comics. It was sort of like a reboot of an old sci-fi fantasy series. And I think that was actually the first time that I really started getting into Mignola because that was before he had done like the Wolverine Jungle Adventure. I mean, I kind of seen Mignola's artwork around a lot of different places, but I don't remember him being on a particular series having a long run. Um, like I remember Gotham by Gaslight. He seemed like a guy who did like special features. I would have to go back and really relook at his bibliography to see like if he ever did a long run on a series prior to Hellboy because I can't remember off the top of my head. I actually remember him as somebody who he did a lot of miniseries and special projects. And whenever they came out, they were always awesome. So yes, I love Mignola's art. Let's see here. All right, so that is her sort of pulling her hair apart there. Um, see here, and HJ Marr says, "I really love Daniel Kwan's directing this movie. It's fantastic. The directing in the movie Glass Onion is good too. Yeah, I loved Glass Onion as well as the Daniels. In fact, this movie made me want to go back and watch Swiss Army Man because that was their previous film, and I never saw it before just because I don't know for some reason Fighting Corpses just didn't it for some reason it didn't draw me in, but seeing how great this movie is makes me want to go back and see that one. Um, and Glass Onion, yeah, I like Ryan Johnson's films. I know the Star Wars film, that one wasn't my favorite either, but it doesn't make me think, oh, he's not a good director. It just made me think that was particularly a Star Wars film that didn't do it for me. Um, but you can say the thing about the one that came after it as well. Um, but generally, I like Ryan Johnson's films. I loved both of the Knives Out movies. My wife and I actually just watched an interesting movie last night called See How They Run, and it's a British murder mystery comedy. Um, I thought it was very funny, very charming, and it feels a lot like Knives Out. It's a period piece, but other than it being a period piece, it tonally has a lot in common with it because even though it's a murder mystery, it's not it's not grim. It's very charming, very fun, very playful. So if you haven't seen the movie See How They Run, and you like Knives Out, I would recommend that movie as well. For those of you who are signed up for the newsletter, you're going to hear me talk about that because usually I talk about movies I've recently seen and See How They Run. Just saw that last night, and I'm definitely going to talk about it in the newsletter. Let's see here. He also says, H.J. Marr says, Mignola's watercolors are beautiful. Completely agree. That's another thing that, I saw that he was posting a lot of those watercolors where he was raising money for, during the pandemic, raising money for comic shops that had to be closed. And he was selling, auctioning off some beautiful watercolor pieces. I think it's actually really cool that he's gotten to this stage in his career where he can just be like, all right, maybe I'll draw a comic, maybe I won't. I can just kind of work on things I want to work on. And if he wants to just sit around and do a bunch of beautiful watercolor paintings and share them with people or auction them for great causes, I'm like, that's amazing. To even be in that position where you can just be like, you know what, I'm just going to go and do a bunch of work for charity. I mean, there's nothing stopping people from doing that, but the fact that, most of us are hampered down by the realities of needing to make a living, and we can't necessarily spend as much time doing that kind of work, but it would be beautiful if we could. I'm changing the position of this hand because there's her hand is almost like a framing device for the officer's face. He's got like one eyebrow going up, one eyebrow going down, and he's very much like, what the hell? Like, yeah, he's freaked out because her face is coming out of her face is coming out of the back of her head. He should be freaked out. Still has the gun pointed right at her head. But I wanted to sort of position his head so that I can figure out where to place her hand, because it seemed like they kind of, the hand, the gesture of her hand. This is another thing where this probably wasn't necessarily storyboarded. And this is also just me capturing whatever frame happened to fall at this point in the story. But visually, the idea of her hand, like she's raising her hand away from her hair, but that her hand is framing his face. It's just a nice little visual piece of storytelling. Although I don't really think I caught his posture because his head really is positioned higher and he's looking down at her. Let's see here. All right, we're already at like 90 minutes. I'm going to have to wrap this up soon. 47 says, still trying to break in. I'll get back to you in a few years about that. You know what? That's the funny thing. Trying to break that. I always like when I've heard other established comic creators say that when people ask them for advice about breaking in, and I very much, every time I've heard someone say, once you've made a comic, you've broken in, I want to just wholeheartedly cheer, because that's, whether how much money you're making from comics is a whole nother thing. But you've been making comics for years. You've been putting out and publishing work. Now, whether that work is self-published, whether it's working with a publisher, all of those things, have different degrees of importance, and whether you really, depending on who values them, who's doing it, but you know, it's not like the comic book industry is a huge industry. So the whole idea of quote unquote breaking into it, it's like, now with animation or storyboarding, that's different because there's a, animation union. So there's an actual genuine benchmark for whether you are part of that industry or not. Have you worked on a union job? Are you in? Are you paying your dues? Are you current on your dues? Are you working on a union job? That, I think, is a place where breaking in has very specific benchmarks. But when it comes to comics, if you're making comics, then you're in comics. Give him a little bit of a frowny face. Because again, head coming out of the back. Now, you know what? I'm going to put a little bit in here to help communicate the story that's not in the frame. I'm going to put her hands just about to wrap around the gun, because what we're missing in this frame that I have is her moving her hands into around the gun to hold the gun against her face, and then she ends up blowing and blowing out smoke. Let's see here. HJ Mars also asks, do you prefer fantasy or sci-fi? And that is tough. That's real tough. I would say that I am split evenly between fantasy, sci-fi, and horror. And I particularly like it when any one of those genres matches up with the other. Like a sci-fi fantasy, a fantasy horror, a science fiction horror, that kind of thing. Pardon me, will I blow my nose again? Anyway, like I was saying, in this frame, I'm just going to add her hand reaching. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's not really 4. Let's just do this one. Those 2 fingers together and these 2 together. And I'm going to put a little arrow moving her hand in. That way, when you come to this next frame of her holding the gun, and yeah, she's pissed. She's like defiant, like, you don't put a gun to my head. And you don't see it in the frame, but what happens after this, all you have is the shot of her with her cheeks puffed up after this, and then it goes to, well, here, let me move this up. It happens super fast. You go from her having her cheeks puffed up, and then it cuts away to her like spinning away from the cop and then spinning back, because then it goes into like a short dance move. But what you don't see in the frames is her blowing smoke. Like right now what's happening is she's sucking on the gun like it's a cigarette. And I'm trying to remember, I think there might be a subplot where the mom is constantly complaining about Joy smoking. But anyway, that's a little thing there. Cheeks sucking in. That little line there is just meant to indicate her cheeks sucking in. And I'm going to have her pull her head back, now with her cheeks blown out, or with her cheeks sort of puffed out. And then I'm going to do her blowing smoke. And then we're going to wrap this up because we've been going extra long. And I have some other stuff that I got to take care of that is not drawing related. So I'll just show you real quick what the animation assist play looks like. So if you got any last minute questions, now's the time. Although to be honest, I'm trying to draw this as quickly as possible. I don't know if I can answer questions while still drawing this. Yeah, this is what happened. This is the reason why I complain about being an inconsistent artist, is the minute I try to draw super, super fast, the things start falling apart in terms of readability. But anyway, what happens is she just blows smoke that she inhaled out of the gun. And notice she's still holding the gun the whole time because she is taking control. To the gun, the officer's hand. So let's see here. H.J. Mara says, currently a teenager, but being a comic creator is my dream job. And he says, what project in the DCU are you most excited for? I have not really paid attention to a lot of the announcements. I know that they're doing a new, I think there's plans for a Supergirl series that I heard them mention. I haven't really paid any attention to any of that because what happens with these things is a lot of stuff gets announced and then maybe a movie does come out, maybe it doesn't. I guess the idea of the brave and the bold with Batman teaming up with new people every movie as like a chance to launch new characters, that sounds pretty cool. Like I think it'd be nice to see a Batman Dead Man movie. I don't think that hasn't been announced, but yeah, I don't know. I don't really pay super too much attention to a lot of those movie announcements. When the movie comes out, that's when I pay attention. If anything, I'm just excited for the next season of Peacemaker because that was something that did come out and I saw and enjoyed. Let's see here. And I see Harumi Senborn in the chat over on Twitch. Hey, thank you for dropping in, Harumi. Thank you so much. We're actually just wrapping up this live stream here, so I'm sorry you missed it, but I'm going to post the highlights later on today, so you can go back if you want and rewatch this whole thing. I'm doing film studies from Everything Everywhere All at Once. Let's see here. I see Kingslow Fitness says she's inhaling as she prepares to fire. He says, I'd like to see AMRB's characters come out and play in animation. Well, you know what? We'll have to bug him on the Discord server, see if he's got any animation to share with us. Anyway, so the last thing that I will show you here, let me go through and I have to go in and turn on every single layer. This looks crazy. By the time I turn all of these on, it's like the screen is just black. So if you go into Procreate and go to Animation Assist, if you go to Page Assist, it shows you the whole thing like it is a PDF, and each layer is a different page. If you go to Animation Assist, then what happens is it treats it like the animation is a let's see here, 1 frame per second. Now, I don't know if I have this set right. Let's see what happens. So it's set to, okay, so yeah, she grabs the cop's face, the lights are flickering, she lets go, he coughs up some glitter, and then puffs up and explodes. They come in tight, she looks defiant, the cops move in, the guy puts the gun to her head, she pulls her hair, lets go, grabs the gun, breathes in, breathes out smoke. We go back to them watching. So this is now, it's in a loop. But basically, this was the idea, is I wanted to see if I could draw these and actually be able to get the story from my drawings as opposed to getting the story, you know, because when you're looking at actual photographs, things read clearly because we're just used to registering human beings and interpreting what's happening. But when you're doing drawings, much like an animation, you have to express a lot more. You really have to almost over-emote in the drawing, and you have to be very clear in that drawing. So this was a challenge for me in terms of how clear could I be in really rough sketches in terms of capturing the motion and the movement. That's why I'm calling it a motion study, taking stills of existing films and drawing them to try and capture motion. So it's not quite storyboarding. It's more like sort of reverse engineering gesture drawing. And I think it's a really good exercise. I learned that I'm not anywhere near as fast as I'd like to be because I really didn't think I could draw 1 frame per minute of stick figures and get this whole thing done in an hour. I only got to not even 30 seconds. I got to like 27 seconds. I think I did 27, 28 frames. So now I know that my speed is probably, well, I guess it's probably about 15 seconds an hour. No, I got close to that. Maybe like 20 seconds an hour. Point being is it took longer than I thought. So, but I also learned a lot. There's a lot that I can learn by doing more of these studies. So I don't think this is the last time I'm going to do it. Maybe whenever I see a movie and I really enjoy it, I'll do another one of these studies just to see what happens. And maybe I'll be a little bit less ambitious. Instead of trying to do a whole minute, I will just keep it to 30 seconds of action. And who knows, maybe I'll try doing it with a action movie. Maybe I'll try doing it with a horror movie. Maybe I'll try doing it with I don't know, something that's an emotional drama where I'm trying to capture the subtleties of character acting in this, just to see what it's like to try and get these things down to their essence. So going back, I'll let you know when it gets to the top of the loop, which it almost is, right after the gun, because it starts with a shot, and it's funny because it returns to the shot of just the Evelyn and the cops, the 3 shot frequently. Throughout this whole scene, you kind of return to that until the other cops kind of break off. So starting here's the cops and them looking at what's going on. Joy grabbing the officer's face, lights flickering. Let's go of the officer's face. He throws up the confetti. Then he goes, what's wrong? Pop. Then all of them are like, what the hell is going on? Joy surrounded by them, the confetti. The cops move in. Another one puts his gun to her head. She separates her hair. Head switches, and she blows the smoke. And that is the end. So that was my little experiment there on frame studies. And I think this is something I encourage all of you guys to do as an exercise. Just go through, you can take a movie on YouTube and just do a quick screen capture as you go through frame by frame, not frame by frame, but go through and just pick 1 frame per minute until you have 30 frames for 30 seconds, or if you want to do a minute-long study, 60 frames, and then you just go through and you just look at them while you draw. You just do stick figures. So cool. Let's see here. Last couple of comments. HJ Mars says, interested in submitting one of my characters like Tyler did for analysis. How do I submit a character? Just post on Instagram and tag me. My Instagram, it's just Jeremy. It's in the description for this video. You can go to the description, and from there you can just go on Instagram, tag me. It's just Gerimi. I never remember whether it's Gerimi or Gerimi. But either way, it's in the description for this video. Go over there, post a character, tag me, and I'll do a draw over. Maybe we'll do it next week or the week after. Cool. King's Little Fitness says, Ashe. Thank you, brother. And he says, lots of great comments there. And he says, great storyboarding, reverse engineering, gesture drawing. He says, gesture drawing even faster. Yeah, it's this whole thing is a great challenge, and I encourage all of you guys to try it as well. But on that note, we're going to wrap up this live stream here. I hope you guys all have a fantastic weekend, and do some analysis, find some things to interest you. But on that note, if you enjoy these live streams and you'd like to get additional live streams, we do bonus live streams twice a month. And we went long with this one, but we do a thing called Art Book Study Group where we dig into some of the best art books around. And we'll do like 2.5, 3 hour, sometimes 4 hour. I think King's Little Fitness was on for like my longest live stream ever, which was like a 6-hour live stream. But anyway, we dig into some of the best art books around. We call it Art Book Study Group. You can get on that for as little as $2 a month. Head on over to patreon.com/Jeremy. That's patreon.com/GERIMI. You also get access to an online digital archive where you can read all of my comic books. And you get access to a Patreon-exclusive Discord server where we share works in progress, tips, feedback, art tool suggestions, reference suggestions, just general shop talk. It's like hanging out in the studio. All that at patreon.com/GERIMI for as little as $2 a month. If you'd like to get a free digital sketchbook, work in progress animated GIFs, blog posts about what I'm reading, what I'm watching, what's inspiring me creatively, you can sign up for my free monthly newsletter at newsletter.jeremy.net. And if you would like to purchase physical copies of my comic books, if you read digitally on Kindle, you go to amazon.jeremy.net. You can pick up books like my first graphic novel, Eye of the Gods. It is a psychological thriller about a man cursed with visions he cannot control. It's a self-contained done-in-one story. Or you can pick up my most recent project, Morning Star. It tells the story of Lucifer's fall from heaven, told as a Western. It's an 8-issue series. Volume 1 contains issues 1 through 4. Volume 2 contains issues 5 through 8. Both volumes have extensive back matter, character design, script excerpts, thumbnails, page layouts, photo reference, and more. This is to show you how I put the whole book together. And on the homepage of my YouTube channel, you can see book flip-throughs if you want to see what's inside the book before you pick it up. Okay, guys, on that note, I got to run, but this was a fun one. Let me know in the comments if you enjoyed this, if you want to see me do more motion studies in the future. If you guys have pieces that you want me to give you some feedback on, you can always tag me on Instagram and just let me know that you want me to do it, and we can do a draw over. Done some of those in the past on the live stream, so it's something I'm trying to do more of. All right, guys. And again, WonderCon. I will put also in the comments. What's my table again? E23. Artist Alley E23. Anaheim in March. WonderCon. Look forward to seeing you guys all there. That's it for now. Go be creative.